Gulf oil spill, also known as the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. The Gulf oil spill was located in the Gulf of Mexico and it happened on the date of April 20th of 2010. The cause of the disaster was an explosion in the oil rig. The pipe bent under pressure because of a lot of gas and oil raising, causing a blast through a concrete core. Originally, it was only about 1,000 barrels of oil spilling per day, but it peaked at about 60,000 barrels. The effects on the environment were that 1,300 miles of shoreline were affected by this oil, and it killed thousands and thousands of marine mammals and sea turtles. But not only did it infect the marine life, it also impacted birds who had homes on the waters. The effects on the humans were that it killed 11 workers and injured 17. Until this day, if the inhalation of the oils will cause symptoms such as headaches, anxiety, depression, and much more. The cleanup and residual effects were that it took nearly 3 months just to contain the oil to start cleaning it up, and around 48,000 were hired to try and help clean up. And even after a decade later, the oil is not fully cleaned up. There's actually still some left over. What was done to clean up were that the oil would gather up, and they used a method called skimming to skim the top layer of the oil to get rid of it. And then they used sorbents to mop up like a sponge. And another method was to just burn some of the oil away, but all these methods would only get rid of only a percentage of it. What the government is doing is they're setting up floating booms to contain spreads and not to go far as 1,300 miles. And they will set up permanent monitoring stations to make sure the oils do not blow up. Here are some pictures of the disaster and the result of the disaster. And interesting facts about it were that not only just the surface marine life was affected, but also the deep sea marine life were affected.
Man-made disaster, destruction of the Aral Sea by Addison Osborne. Some basic information about the Aral Sea is that the disaster occurred in Central Asia, and the Aral Sea sits on the boundary between Kazakhstan and North Uzbekistan. It took place between 1960 and 1987, but was confirmed October 1990 by Western scientists. Even though there were many causes to the Aral Sea disaster, some of the main ones were the cotton industry and the Quarren Canal. The reason that the cotton industry was such a big source of water consumption was because of its flourishing lands and how they needed water to keep the cotton industry running. The Quarren Canal that led to Central Asia also wasted about 30 to 70% of the water from the Aral Sea. Because of the Aral Sea disaster, it affected many things, including plants, animals, humans, and many more. Some things we saw were biodiversity, which drastically minimized, increase in salt and dust storms. We encountered the demise of commercial fishing, unstable expansion of irrigation. The sea was no longer able to support major fisheries and failed to be a key transportation route. As a result, the Aral Sea was not able to be completely fixed. But as a last-ditch effort, they made a dam separating the southern and northern parts of the Aral Sea. As time went on, we saw a significant comeback in the northern Aral Sea's water levels. This was because of changes in sediment and water depth. Some ways the government will try to prevent this disaster from happening again is to keep track of the progress that the Aral Sea makes with their new dam idea, and they also planned on cutting off any canal that takes up too much water from the Aral Sea. Overall, the government will try to prevent disasters like this from happening again by keeping track of how much water is going out of key bodies of water like the Aral Sea through irrigation systems and canals. They will go through the canals to try to improve them. And with today's technology, we will be able to rebuild a new infrastructure for the dam in hopes of improving its durability. And lastly, some interesting facts about the Aral Sea is that it used to be as big as West Virginia. It had more water than Lake Huron and Lake Erie. It translates to the Sea of Islands, and it was once the fourth largest lake to exist.
The oil drilling rig, Deepwater Horizon, was operating in the Macondo province in the Gulf of Mexico. On April 20th, 2010, as the workers were closing off the drilling pipe, the concrete core meant to plug the wells, which would be used later, fractured. Gas shot up the pipe and caused a huge explosion when it reached the surface level. The explosion killed 11 people and injured 17. The rig sank and capsized on April 22nd, 2010, breaking the pipe and beginning the largest marine oil spill in history. The well spilled oil for 87 days, leaking over 4 million barrels or 134 million gallons of oil. All attempts to plug or slow the flow by the company and government failed until early June when BP Exploration and Production were able to fit a temporary cap on the pipe. This cap, plus another device, were able to siphon 25,000 gallons a day into tankers, though allowing some oil to escape. 3 months after the explosion, the well was permanently and completely closed. The spill was catastrophic to the whole ecosystem. The oil created a 57,500 square mile slick on the water surface. It polluted 1,100 miles of shoreline, and it ravaged estuaries and marshes that rely on a delicate balance. Many ocean-dependent businesses were also affected by the oil. A period of delay on offshore drilling was enacted, and intense cleanup efforts followed, including bacteria, burning, and years of backbreaking work. In the end, on April 4, 2016, BP and its partners had lost over $40 billion. I'm sure that consequence served as a warning to other oil companies to stay on top of upkeep. The ocean has still not recovered completely. During my working on this project, I learned that the drilling boss of the Deepwater Horizon, Jimmy Harrell, died of cancer on Monday, May 10, 2021. I just thought that was an interesting coincidence.
Prince William Sound, Alaska oil spill. The oil spill happened in 1989, March 24th, located in Blythe Reef in Prince William, Alaska Sound. It was caused by Captain Joseph Hazelwood allowing an unlicensed third mate to steal while he was drinking. The oil spill covered about 13,000 miles of the coastline. Exxon employees, federal responders, and more than 11,000 Alaska residents joined to stop the oil spill. They used aggressive hot water, which was effective for removing oil, but the side effect, it also killed the remaining animals and the plants in the process. It took about 3 years to clean up, but it was worth saving life on Earth. To prevent this, the U.S. Congress made the Oil Pollution Act of 1990, signed by President George W. Bush, increased penalties for companies who spilled oils and required all ships to have double hulls. After the oil spill, Exxon Valdez was repaired and then transport oils in Europe. But Europe banned all single-hull ship tankers in 2002. So it was sold for a shipping company in Hong Kong used for oil transport, but then it was badly damaged and sold for scrap metal in 2012 in India. It had its name changes for several times, like Exxon Mediterranean, Sea River Mediterranean, Dongfeng Ocean, and finally Oriental Nicety. And this here is all the links I had for my research. Thank you.
Mississippi/Gulf Dead Zone by Ali Torres. Where do they occur/when do dead zones occur? Appears annually May through September in the Gulf of Mexico. After tons of nutrients from fertilizers use and sewage in the Mississippi watershed wash downstream into the Gulf. Excess nutrients spark an algal explosion, giving rise to a dead zone. Specific cause of dead zones/what do they do to the environment? Occurs because of a process called eutrophication. Happens when a body of water gets too many nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen. Human activities are the main cause of these excess nutrients being washed into the ocean. Phosphorus, nitrogen, and other nutrients increase the productivity or fertility of marine ecosystems. Plankton, algae, and seaweeds will grow quickly and excessively on the water surface. What are the effects of dead zones on humans? Elevated nutrient levels and algal blooms can also cause problems in drinking water in communities nearby and upstream from dead zones. Harmful algal blooms release toxins that contaminate drinking water, causing illness for animals and humans. How long to clean up and what was done to clean up dead zones? Conservation tillage. Reducing how often fields are tilled reduces erosion and soil compaction, builds soil organic matter, and reduces runoff. Managing livestock waste. Keeping animals and their waste out of streams, rivers, and lakes. Keep nitrogen and phosphorus out of waters and restore stream banks. And there is no specific time of how long it takes to reduce dead zones. It would probably take years. Both methods would be better to stop future dead zones. What has the government done to stop dead zones? Proposed plan to reduce 8,000 square mile dead zone. Called on Congress to provide incentives for reducing polluted runoff to protect the Gulf in the next Farm Bill. Environmental Defense also urged Congress to create new programs to reuse manure. Congress may reauthorize federal farm programs this year. As of right now, there hasn't been serious changes to stop dead zones, but there has been pleas from the EPA to Congress to help stop dead zones. Additional facts about dead zones. Dead zones are deadly. Few or no organisms can survive their toxic, depleted, or hypoxic waters. Often encompassing large swaths of ocean and even lakes and ponds, dead zones become oceanic deserts devoid of the usual aquatic biodiversity. After the 1970s, dead zones became more widespread. A 2008 study found more than 400 dead zones exist worldwide. These are my sources. Thank you for listening.
Florida Hell by Ingram Lee. The cause of the door to hell is when a Soviet drilling rig accidentally punched into a massive underground natural gas cavern, making the ground collapse the entire drill to fall underground. The door to hell impacted on the environment by burning off natural gas and released a lot of methane gas, which made a lot of plants die due to the gas. The door to hell impacted on humans because humans wanted to investigate the door to hell because it still burns to this day. When the explorer named Coronas went into the door to hell, he tried to get rid of the rig by setting it on fire. The door to hell took about 29 years for it to be cleaned up, which was in 2010, to make the crater close by using drigs, and there are no effects during the time when it was cleaned up. After the door to hell was all cleaned up, Turkmenistan still continued to resume drilling and provide more revenue. Two examples of what the government was doing to reduce the risk of the door to hell is to send exploration teams to locate deposits of gas and oil to make a drilling rig, and the government wants it to be close so that the gas might limit future development. Here's the sources used for this project.
The Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl was a series of dangerous dust storms, one after another, from the 1930s to the early 1940s. It took place in the southern region of the United States and even reached places like New York and Washington, D.C. The Dust Bowl was caused by factors such as weather, the drought that was going on, poor agriculture by people, wind erosion, and the high temperatures. Because of the Dust Bowl, there were a lot of effects on the surrounding environment. Deep-rooted grass, the southern grasslands, and the Great Plains were being destroyed. There was severe wind erosion and droughts. Plants and animals, such as livestock, were not fit for a situation like a dust storm, so they died off. The severe winds caused tornadoes in large areas to lose their topsoil, and the high temperatures caused heat waves. The Dust Bowl also had effects on humans living in the southern region. Families had to move to other lands due to it being so dangerous. Poor shelters at the time caused dust to easily get in. All the dust everywhere caused dust pneumonia in the lungs. Dust pneumonia and the heat waves caused several thousands of deaths. People suffered economically because they couldn't rely on farming for food or money. Very severe drought had caused a very low water supply for hills. The start to the end of the Dust Bowl was in 1939. The southern region had finally gotten a little bit of rain. Although people suffered a lot, the government did what they could to try and stop all the dust storms that were still occurring. They did this by making projects and surfaces where they planted trees to act as windbreakers to protect farms against the dangerous winds. They created new farming techniques to recover from the Dust Bowl and to counter the poor agriculture that caused the Dust Bowl. They motivated farmers to move out of the drier lands. The families seen are suffering a lot due to the effects of the dust storm. No healthy plants or animals can be seen anywhere in these photos. This famous photo, Migrant Wonder, was taken by Dorothea Lunge and was taken to make people more aware of the families suffering during the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. It was seen a lot in magazines and newspapers during the time. And these are a couple of my...
Chernobyl nuclear power plant explosion. The explosion happened in Pipet, Ukraine on April 26 in 1986. The cause of the disaster was a reactor with flawed designs and a breach of protocol during a simulated power outage safety test. There were some mutations on plants and animals. There were also some mutations on humans. However, there has been cleanup efforts made. Although it has not been fully cleaned up, the first part has been worked on. And that first part includes the building of massive containment dome around the crumbling city, of which this is expected to take until 2023. Then the second part will be to clean it up inside, and this is to be expected to take till 2065 to be fully cleaned up, and it will have been 79 years to be cleaned up. However, progress has been made towards the cleanup efforts, such as the deployment of robots inside the contaminated zone. There has been actions taken to prevent another Chernobyl. They are some new safety measures and new international legal instruments to ensure that there is an early warning system of nuclear accidents. Here are some pictures of the aftermath. One interesting fact about Chernobyl is that the Chernobyl disaster happened during the Cold War, so all the governments were really careful what information was released. So the Western countries were not told that there was a nuclear explosion until it happened, and the citizens of the city surrounding Chernobyl were only told days before, just barely given enough time to evacuate. Then here are my sources.
Minamata disease. Origin. Discovered in Minamata, Japan on May of 1956, seen in people giving them neurological symptoms, resulted in death. Causes. Minamata disease was a neurological disease caused by severe mercury poisoning. Caused by was a local factory, Chiso Corp, that would discharge contaminated toxic industrial waste onto near waters, which contained heavy amounts of methylmercury. The poisoning in humans was the consumption of fish that were contaminated with methylmercury when they would fish in waters where the waste was dumped. Impacts on humans. Huge impact on human health. Symptoms included seizures, cerebral palsy, loss in sight, hearing, and talking. In less extreme cases included loss in memory, reduced intelligence, and attention deficit disorder, and death. It can affect unborn babies, and once born can affect the brain, deformities of limb, and general muscle numbness. Impacts on the environment. Worse industrialized pollution cases, and when released, water-lead sediments converts to toxic mercury and enters the fish's food chain. Local sea life, who either consume other fishes that were absorbed by mercury poisoning. Minamata disrupted sea life by not building enough organism that the food chain needs. The toxic mercury became a normal part of sea life food chain. Resolvement and cleanup. How long the cleanup was. Diseases don't go away overnight, but many laws were put up against industrial companies. From 1932 to 1968 was the amount of time that Chiso Corp did their waste dumping. From 1974 to 1990, a project was carried out to remove sediment from the bottom of Minamata Bay. What was done to clean up? The discharge of toxic chemicals onto water was stopped. In order to restore the environment, removal of 1.5 million cubic meters of contaminated sediment took place. For the victims, a government relief law was set up. Government policies. In 1959, a compensation agreement happened between patient and Chiso Corp. In 2009 and 2010, government relief was given to the victims and funds to at least 20,000 to 30,000 patients who applied. 3 interesting facts. Number 1, Chiso Corp was the most advanced and best factory around World War II. Number 2, Minamata disease was first presented in a 5-year-old girl. Number 3, cats were also one of the first animals to get it, and some called it the cat dance disease.
3 Mile Island by Haley Griswold, period 5. 3 Mile Island occurred near Middletown, Pennsylvania, USA. Started on March 28, 1979. 3 Mile Island Station had a number of problems, causing a chain reaction effect of the events that happened. Causes: a minor malfunction in the secondary cooling circuit causing temperature to rise. The core was severely damaged. The pilot operated relief valve opened but never closed, causing reactor fluid to leak into the coolant drain tank. After operators tried doing multiple things to try and fix it, radioactive gases released into the air. Effects of the disaster. Many effects of the 3 Mile Island accident happened. Metallic taste, erythema, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, hair loss, and damage to many plants. Deaths of pets and farm and wild animals. Above average rates of cancer and birth defects in the surrounding area. The development of the U.S. nuclear power industry was put on hold for 30 years. After the disaster, the damaged nuclear reactor system at TMI-2 nearly took 12 years and cost approximately $973 million to clean up. It was really challenging to clean up, and plants had to be decontaminated. The water they used and stored while cleaning up had to be processed before they could use it again. There were no human deaths, but there were many other effects that were caused. Radioactive fuel and water were removed. Workers shipped 15 tons of radioactive waste to a nuclear waste storage in Idaho. Higher costs and longer construction times from nuclear plants to come. Safety controls became more strict by federal requirements. The 3 Mile Island got its name because it is located 3 miles down river from Middletown, Pennsylvania. Although the site was decontaminated, some damaged fuel still remains along with unknown amounts of radioactive material.
Pitcher lead contamination, toxic ghost town. Pitcher lead contamination history. Location: Ottawa County, Oklahoma, United States. Date: 1973 till now. Lead contamination all throughout the city made at hazardous levels. Causes: the zinc ore mines continue to churn out and demand material. As a result, the town boomed. Years of extracting ore from the earth led to piles of toxic waste from the mine scattered through the city. Effects the disaster had on environment, plants, animals, water supply. More than 1,000 birds were found dead across Pitcher, suspected of zinc poisoning. Effects disaster had on humans. More than 1/3 of Pitcher children possessed enough lead in their bloodstreams to cause brain damage. How long did it take for the disaster to be cleaned up? Were there any residual effects? The contamination was so bad that in April 2006, the U.S. government decided to close Pitcher and relocate all its residents, so it never got properly rid of the toxic lead and zinc that is still there. New policies to make sure this possibility is reduced in the future. There is now a government program called EPA, United States Environmental Protection Agency, that focuses on prevention of lead contamination. Interesting fact, it is one of the most dangerous places to live in America. More pictures.
Exxon Valdez oil spill. This disaster occurred 32 years ago on March 24, 1989, at Prince William Sound, Alaska, United States. The ship crashed onto the shore, causing about 11 million gallons of crude oil to be spilled. The captain was drinking and fell asleep, so another unlicensed crewmate controlled the ship which had a broken rudder. The oil contaminated more than 45 beach sites nearby, killed hundreds of thousands of animals. It directly killed more than 255,000 animals, including seabirds, sea otters, seawolf, eagles, and orcas. It affected more than 26,000 jobs in the tourism industry. Fishermen went bankrupt and 4 people died. The total cost can be exceeded up to $7 billion, which includes cleanup costs, penalties, and fines. This took 3 years to clean up with the help of 11,000 people. After all, only 10% of the oil was completely cleaned up. Some species haven't fully recovered. They clean up by using hot water or dispersing chemicals and skimming the oil from the water surface. But these ways are bad for human health. To prevent this type of disaster from happening again, the government applied Oil Pollution Act to all oil tankers, setting up safe shipping routes and operational procedures. The Oil Pollution Act includes responsibility for oil spills, require all oil tankers to have a double hull. And here are some pictures of the disasters. Interesting fact, the amount of oil spill could fill 125 Olympic sites swimming pools. And here are the sources.
Ecocide in Vietnam, Agent Orange. The ecocide in Vietnam, Agent Orange, occurred in Tay Nam Bao, which lasted 11 years, starting in October 8, 1961 to 1972. The ecocide was caused due to the U.S. Air Force spraying more than 80 million liters of Agent Orange and other herbicides contaminated with dioxin. Plants, animals, water supply, land, rivers, the ocean, and people were all poisoned. All of the poison resulted in serious health problems for all of the people that were infected. After the spread finished, the disaster took about 50 years to be cleaned up. The disaster is sure not to happen again due to 9 U.S. senators, which joined Vietnam's Deputy Prime Minister Truong Hoan Biao at the Bien Hoa Project launch on April 29, 2019. The disaster will also not happen again due to the U.S. government, which agreed to cooperate on dioxin remediation at the Bien Hoa Air Base area. Some other interesting facts about the ecocide in Vietnam include the term ecocide, which was first used during the Vietnam War to describe the deliberate targeting of the environment in conflict. Agent Orange refers to a specific blend of herbicides used during the Vietnam War. The name Agent Orange came from the identifying orange stripe around the 55-gallon drums in which the herbicide was stored. Thank you.
Flint water crisis. Location and dates. The Flint water crisis took place in Flint, Michigan of the United States. The disaster started on April 2014 and ended in June 2016. Many residents were exposed to high levels of lead. At least 12 people died and many more were sickened. Cause and effect. Cause. Officials from Flint switched the city's water supply to the Flint River. They failed to add needed corrosion control to the river water. Lead from the city's old pipes mixed into the water, causing high levels of lead in the blood. Effect. Water and high levels of lead. It was dangerous to drink. Risk of high blood pressure or kidney disease. Animals such as the songbirds were affected by the lead in the water. Effects on humans. Up to 12,000 children were at risk of high levels of lead poisoning. Lead in the human body can be dangerous and can cause diseases like learning disabilities and behavior issues. Poor residents were affected the most by the levels of lead because it costed more for cleaner water. Some people became very ill due to the lead. Time it took to clean up. It took the city of Flint 3 years to completely clean up the lead in the water. The city of Flint had to replace many of their pipes due to so much contamination. It took about $31 million to fix the water and clean the pipes. More was done to clean up. Old lead pipes are being replaced frequently with new copper pipes. People at home are still using filters just in case. Federal and state funds were spent to help Flint fix its broken water system. Free water bottles were given out to people during the time of fixing the pipes. How government helps reducing risk. The water is being tested more often. The pipes are frequently cleaned or changed. Government tells people to buy filters just in case they need to filter the water more. More money is spent on filtering and water system. This means that the government spends more time on cleaning it to make sure it is safe. Interesting fact, Bernie Sanders asked for the resignation of Governor Snyder after the crisis happened. He did this because the governor knew that there was lead in the water. With knowing there was lead heat in the water, he didn't do anything. As a result, many children were exposed to brain damage from the lead.
North Pacific Gyre Garbage Patch by Ava Walrath, Period 5. History. The North Pacific Gyre Garbage Patch is part of a garbage patch in the central North Pacific Ocean. The garbage patch reaches from the west coast of North America to Japan. It was discovered in 1997, but the month is unknown. Cause and effect. Cause. The garbage patch is created by the North Pacific Gyre, which is a system of circulation currents in an ocean. The currents eventually brought all the debris together, creating the patch. Effect. The trash is killing marine life, and plastic takes thousands of years to decay, so the toxics from the plastics have entered the food chain, threatening human health. Cleanup information. The project was started in 2013 and should end up cleaning half of the debris. The cleanup of the North Pacific Gyre Garbage Patch is still happening to this day, and will continue to happen as long as humans continue to pollute. There were no residual effects. The environmental organization, the Ocean Cleanup, has been collecting plastic waste using a floating barrier. What is the government doing? There is an active federal bill in Congress aimed at reducing marine plastic pollution and marine debris. This federal bill will create laws to stop pollution. Hopefully they will be more strict so that people might listen. The government is doing a lot of little things as well to help that will eventually help lead to a bigger cause. Extra fact. The entire Great Pacific Garbage Patch is twice the size of Texas, or 3 times the size of France. Sources.
This presentation is on the Libby asbestos contamination. The first exposure started in 1919. Highest occupational and environmental exposure started between 1950 to 1970. It happened in Libby, Montana. The cause was mining for vermiculite. Grace and Company knew the vermiculite was contaminated with asbestos and it caused health problems, but didn't warn anyone, including their employees, so mining continued until 1990. It contaminated the soil in Libby due to the nitrogeologic deposit of the asbestos. It also contaminated the air. High winds and storms move the asbestos around and be suspended in the air, can be inhaled by human or animal, and can cause health problems. About 400 Libby residents died. Almost 3,000 more are currently suffering with asbestos exposure-related illnesses. They completed cleanup after 18 years, exception of the former vermiculite mine in forested area. EPA cleaned up over 2,600 properties, removed more than 1 million cubic yards of contaminated soil, and disposed of it at the former vermiculite mine, removed more than 30,000 cubic yards of contaminated building material, which is placed in a specially designed landfill cell. They also investigated over 7,600 properties. EPA placed the site on the Superfund Program National Priority List and declared a public health emergency in Libby. EPA transferred oversight and responsibility to the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, except for the actual mine site. Libby asbestos contamination is the largest and longest-running asbestos cleanup project in American history.
The TVA Kingston fossil plant coal fly ash slurry spill. In December 2008, the largest toxic coal ash spill in U.S. history took place in Roane County, Tennessee, at the Kingston fossil plant owned by the TVA. The spill occurred because the TVA irresponsibly stored extensive amounts of coal ash. With that and erosion, a dike failure soon struck. Miraculously, no one died from the disaster itself. However, many houses were left swamped or destroyed, and such large amounts of coal ash led to the contamination of rivers, infecting a valuable protein many of us eat, fish. Not only that, but drinking water supplies for humans, such as the Memphis Sand Aquifer, were endangered. Roughly every major river in the southeast of the U.S. was linked to an unlined leaking coal ash pit. Millions of cubic yards worth of coal ash were dumped into Swan Pond and 3 nearby swamps when the spill happened, polluting the water for both animals and humans. Marine life that once thrived in these rivers was either contaminated or killed, and mammals unlucky enough were buried. A 2018 study found that children and pregnant women are more exposed to the effects of coal ash, including birth defects, developmental delays, various types of cancer, as well as damage to the heart, lungs, and nervous system. More than 30 workers died during the cleanup process, and hundreds more fell ill due to the TVA ignoring safety rules and misleading the workers about the dangers of coal ash. TVA spent $1 billion and began a dredging operation in 2009. They removed 3 million cubic yards worth of coal ash, although there is still lots left to clear.
I researched the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It is located in between Hawaii and California. The patch is 2 times the size of Texas. Most of the patch is made up of plastic and plastic particles. 80% of the patch comes from land-based human activities. The patch and other trash in the ocean hurts marine life. An example is turtles eating plastic bags because they look like jellyfish. Humans are also affected. The fish that eat small plastic, we eat later. And plastic is toxic to humans. The patch is only growing. Because it is so far away from any country's coastline, no country is taking responsibility for it. There are non-governmental organizations that are trying to clean it up. One of the organizations is the Ocean Cleanup. They're trying to corral the trash and push it ashore so then it can be recycled. The big question is, what can we do? We're limited to using our single-use plastics, which is the majority of what is floating around in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Thank you.